And so again, so we're going to talk about college kids being back home. I know some of us have college kids back home, some of us do not. But I think that this might be an interesting conversation just overall, and not just focusing on just college kids being back home and being able to find your joy. But if you're sheltering in place right now still, and there's anybody that you're sheltering in place with for a long time, how do you maintain yourself and your own sense of peace and joy while you're in close proximity with someone and you're essentially there 24 hours a day? So that's where we're going to go with this conversation today. And what I want to do today is really start out by giving us a framework to talk. And I'm going to ask you all some questions, and then we'll jump into the conversation. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. And for the moment, I'm just going to share my entire screen. And I was messing with this idea of being able to maintain a sense of joy when you have your college kids or other people, like I said, that you're sheltering in place with, and your own sense of security and foundation. And so as I was messing with the concept and really writing down some ideas, then I wanted something three-dimensional to be able to display that. And so I was really kind of thinking of it in a triangle. But then, as you know, with Black Women's Lives, our ideas about the world and the way that we move through the world are really complex. And so I wanted to have this kind of as a foundation for our conversation. And the first piece of, at the very top of this pyramid, is this idea of ancestral and spiritual connection. And when I thought about this, I was just thinking for myself in the ways in which I'm dealing with my children, and the way that my grandparents dealt with me and my parents dealt with me when I was their age. And so it made me think about just kind of ancestral connections, and spiritually, what I've been doing a lot, which I'm sure they were doing, is just kind of been praying and asking them for guidance through this situation. The next thing that I was thinking about is just overall identity, and my identity as a mother, but then also as a professional that has to run a business, and run a business in a very different and dynamic way. And then the final one is I want to kind of talk about this concept of Black women's leadership. And I feel like we're lucky today because one person and one of my colleagues and friends that I feel like is a really good expert in talking about the ideas of Black women leadership is on the phone on this call with us today. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen. So I've got those three concepts: ancestral and spiritual connection, identity, and Black women's leadership. And my friend Dr. Kendra McCrae is on the phone. So she's written and done some research around this area. And so I'm going to pull her into the conversation so we can talk about this. So my first question to you is around identity. So I want you all to each introduce yourselves, and basically you got to do this too. I want you to introduce yourself by telling us what are the three most important layers of your identity. Three most important layers of your identity. And it doesn't have to be everything, but what are the three most important layers? And Alethea, you got to do this too. So whoever wants to go first, jump in. Ola Ifa, you want to go first and unmute yourself?
I try not to always go first because I try to give space for other people too, but you know, I'm always ready to go. I just remember last week when you were saying, if you talk a lot, just hold space for everyone else. I'm like trying to figure out hold space, but it's like crickets over here. So I am Oshindele Ola Ifa. and I am a mother. I am a spiritualist that focuses on African traditional spirituality, mainly Yoruba. And I am also a documentary photographer or visual storyteller. So those are the top three for me: mother, priestess, and then photographer, in terms of how I identify and move about in the world.
Okay, thank you. Who else? Top three.
Okay, I'll go. This is Consuelo Douglas. Happy Wednesday to everybody.
Yay, happy Wednesday.
Let's see. I identify as a mommy, a wife, and it got kind of tough here, but I'm going to add spirit. And spirit isn't just spirit is more communal, because it's on multiple levels. So not just connecting with God, ancestors, but also the people that I'm in community with, because those pieces just kind of flow through me.
I like that.
Hi, good morning. I'm Alethea, and I would say woman, God in all her many forms, and family.
Hi, I'm Kendra McCray. Folks in the community know me as Njamile. And I would like to say that my three are family. So my identity is a mother, a wife, a daughter, a sister. Those aspects of me are very important. And I would say my career, by career, I'm an educator, and I'm developing that aspect of my career that is an intellectual researcher. I love that, and wouldn't let it go, want to develop it and grow it. And my community orientation, I put that was my knee jerk. That's why I didn't just jump in, because it's like, okay, what does that mean? And so when I thought about it for a few more seconds, that is the part, I think that's how I was first, in a blink, going to describe my racial, ethnic, and gender identity, and how I express it and understand it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Beza. And I think for me, the first thing that I would say is I'm a daughter. And so that's the first thing that has shaped me or molded me as I grew up. And then secondly is a sister. So not necessarily by blood, but in community with Black women specifically. And that's what shaped me in my adulthood, especially. And then now I would say, as far as career-wise, I would say writer, thinker. And I would say the aspects of being a daughter and a sister informs how I think and how I write.
All right, Sister Benicia.
All right. So y'all be making folks think. Okay. So I have mother/family, and then I have creative, and I put warrior, but then I put warrior / I like survivor.
Yeah,
I'm a survivor. Yeah. So those would be my three.
Okay, fair enough. And I would say that my three, when I thought about it, is mother, psychologist, and business owner. But then I was kind of playing with the psychologist, because I don't necessarily like to identify as that. One of the things that I noticed, though, in the conversation is that everybody, and I wonder if you all noticed this, that everybody identified mother, daughter, sister, some family orientation. That was like number one. That was the primary thing. And so that is important. I think that in terms of Black women's lives, in terms of our connection with each other, that is important. I wonder if that sense of identifying that primarily ever gets in your way of being able to find the joy that you want in the other areas of your lives.
Yes.
Is that a question that you're asking?
Yes. It's a question.
Because, okay, so for myself, there have been times when, I'm sorry, like I'm hooked up. Okay. There have been times when being a mother has gotten in the way of, especially with the creativity, because I've had to put off maybe doing, I might get a moment of creative inspiration and like a window of it. And as a mother, things would come up that I would have to tend to in the arena of mother or family. And so I would have to put that counter to the side, and never really setting. So I'm learning about boundaries. That's another thing. And so not really having clear boundaries set with certain things that I would allow the mothering piece to get in the way, when sometimes it was stuff that was not like an emergency. So I even had to like teach my children when they were younger, and I would come in from work. Like as soon as I would come in, even when I was married, they would just be like, "Mama, mama, mama." And so I had to like stop them and start teaching them like the first 15 minutes, 20 minutes when I come in, that's let me come in the house and, let me switch out of my roles. And so, and even now they do that. Now they'll say, "Hey mama, how are you?" instead of what I need. But it did, for me, it did get in the way. And it took me a while to be able to openly say that without feeling guilty or without judging myself.
What about anybody else? Has that ever been something that's gotten in the way of like thinking of yourself as a mother, a daughter, a sister, a family member, a niece first? Has that gotten in the way of other areas of your life?
I'd say yes and no for me. So I think yes, in some of the same ways Benicia mentioned. I decided to have children in the midst of pursuing this career as an academic, and it has definitely changed my trajectory and shaped it in a way that is difficult, at times. I selected to stay in Atlanta, and at times when it would have better served my career to apply to higher ranking programs outside of the state and things like that. But I think it also lends to my credibility in certain spaces. So, and helps me. So, in two ways, I think that it helps me is that now I have these wonderful adult daughters who are very, very smart, and I spin ideas off of. And I even ask for help in certain areas, where if I don't understand something, I'll say, "Okay, you seem to understand this. You've always seemed to have gotten this better. Will you help me? Will you help mom with the books?" My younger daughter is in business accounting, and I'm just like, yo, like help. And then also, sometimes, more often than I would have thought, people will, when they ask me about my holistic self, my holistic life, will say, "Oh," something like, if being an educator, "Well, what do your daughters do? Where are they?" "Oh, well, you must know how to help our students because your daughters are doing so well." And I do think in a way those things are connected. I don't think that there's a one-to-one connection, but for some people that enhances my credibility. So, yeah.
Anybody else? I see Consuela and Olaifa. Go ahead, Consuela. We can't hear you though. You got to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, now we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
No.
Yes. We can hear you.
No.
Oh, yes, we can hear you. Oh, now we can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Okay, yes.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I hope you
This
can
is
hear me.
hilarious doing this
Somebody
medium.
nod if you can hear me.
Mhm.
No. Hold on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you hear me now? No.
Consuela, you disconnect the first. I guess you may have been on your phone at first because we see
Yes.
you both on video.
All right. So the what I've been learning is that my kids are evolving, and what they need changes. And so for me, I've had to stop things in the moment. So say I'm working on a project and I get a call like late at night, because somebody's going through something, they're processing something, they need to talk about it. And so those are the things that I'm finding in this moment, that what they need has changed, and what I give them has to change. So that might mean just kind of making adjustments in the moment. You guys have paused. I don't know if you're still with me or not.
We can.
Are you there?
Yes. Okay, so much for using this as a recording.
That spirit.
Well, I guess the spirit was like, whatever. Okay, so Consuela, I saw that several people had responded to her already. Olaifa, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I was going to say, in terms of, has my motherhood interrupted my other areas in my life? And I will say that there were choices that I made because I was a mother, or choices I didn't make. So there are several. I love to travel, particularly internationally. I think I would be living in another country right now if I wasn't a mother, right? Absolutely. There were opportunities that I just could not, I could not accept because of my motherhood, because I knew that I could not be away from my children for so long. And I pushed it to the limit though, because so there's been times in my life where I've been away from my children for up to 6 weeks, but it was very difficult in the pursuit of spiritual education or doing some type of visual storytelling. And but I would not exchange it. You know what I mean? I just feel like, okay, well, you know, they're almost grown now, or most of them are grown. I have 3 children. Maybe when the youngest one is more independent, then this is the time where I'll be living in other countries or going off for months at a time, you know. So that was all I was going to say.
Anybody else? So I've thought about this a lot. I can definitely identify with the idea of living in another country. I don't know if I would be living in another country, but I would definitely travel more. And I already travel a lot. So like my life would definitely look different. And so I've always just kind of really thought about that, the fact that I made the choice to be a mother, and conscientiously make a choice to be connected with my family. And, you know, at one point, even conscientiously made a choice to be in a marriage for a long period of time. And so the thing that I realized is, for Black women, and I don't think that we hear this conversation enough, is around the importance of balance and boundaries. And those are 2 things that Benicia said. Like, so she started out the conversation. And so to be able to have that identity and prop that identity up as being a mother, a daughter, a sister, a grandmother, being in connection with community, but having a sense of balance, and then being able to set boundaries. And I think about that also. So Consuela, we can see you, and we were able to hear you from before. You just couldn't hear us. But all our heads are going, yes, 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 we can hear you. And so being able to have that sense of balance, so you can be clear about how much you are going to give of yourself as connected to community, but then how much of yourself that you're going to put into your career is, I think, a unique experience that women have to figure out for themselves. Because it's rarely a conversation. I think maybe more of like the men probably in our generation think about a little bit more maybe than our parents' generation, but it is not as much of a conversation for men. So career, them putting that forward and front, that's not a problem, but that's not necessarily socially acceptable for us. And so the thing around that I have realized for myself as my children have come back home and I'm living with them is to be able to enjoy the experience, but then also be okay with one, setting boundaries with them. And two, being able to shift from this idea of them, so I have girls, them being little girls to now they're young adults, and being able to treat them as young adults, but at the same time, recognizing that I have rights to have boundaries because I'm no longer primarily their mother. That's not my primary role in life. So I'm shifting from this idea of my primary role in the world is to be their mother, and shifting to this idea of like, I want to do some other stuff. And part of that, a lot of that, anybody that knows me, means that other than this COVID thing, I would be on a plane someplace. And it would not be interacting with them. And so that idea of being able to find your joy is really being able to shift. And I would say for each of you, being able to shift. So if you have those three things as primary, recognize that it can be a balancing act. Mom doesn't always have to be number one. Sometimes it might be number three when it's appropriate, or number two. Or if you've got 10 things that are really part of your identity, that you can shift those things at any given time to be able to suit your needs and to not feel guilty about doing any of that. So it feels weird to have this like silence because I see y'all going like
Right.
but everybody is muted. The other thing, so in terms of identity, is this idea of Black women's leadership. So a lot of what we learn to do, particularly for those on the call that have children, is when you're raising children, is to lead from the front. This is what you're going to do. This is how we're going to do these things. This is what's important. This is what's not important. This is who you're going to play with. This is who you're not going to associate with. Leading from the front. Shifting, and this is identity shift too, is when you're shifting from raising kids to parenting young adults, is being able to lead from behind, which is a very different skill set. And Benicia, you got all grown children, so I know you've learned how to do this. So I'm gonna pull you in real quick. So tell us, how did you learn to make that shift with your kids?
Ooh, trial and error. It's so interesting that this is the topic because, and I'm gonna answer your question in this. Mm-hmm. Yesterday, my daughter and I, my oldest daughter, we're in the house together, and so we did our walk. We doing this like she's an exercise, that's her thing, and so when we did our walk yesterday, we had the dog, and there were times when I was walking behind her, I was walking behind her, and I was thinking like, dang, I remember, when she was a kid, and we would walk alongside, I would hold her hand, but now I'm in a position that even though I'm behind her, I can protect her. It's like I got her back, and so this is what I was thinking yesterday, but really, I did not have, so a lot of it was done based on what I did not have growing up. And so a lot of the things that I did not have growing up, or the support that I wasn't offered growing up, and I felt were important were some of the things that I incorporated with them. But I also, years ago, this might sound crazy, but I got a natal chart done for them, like in 2009, when I was coming out of heavy Christianity. And once I realized I could not understand, like I had, the same kids, like they were all in the same house, but they were coming out different, and so being naive, I didn't understand, how could we all be up under the same house and be different? But in me getting their charts and really being able to understand their emotional setup, it allowed me to be able to deal with them or work and support them accordingly. And so we feel like, even with me and my daughter when I came here, like when I originally came here, she was like, I need help. I'm working on my master's. I got these dogs. I'm teaching full time, blah, blah, blah. So it was difficult when I came in out of being in my own space into a space with her. And for a minute, I felt like in my mind, like, dang, she the daughter, I'm the mom, and I'm coming into her space. So that was kind of awkward. And as a kid, like she don't speak in the morning. And so I would get up in the morning like, good morning. And she would just kind of look at me dry. And I'm like, well, damn, but this is the adult that she has, this is the adult that she has become. And it's not right or wrong, but being able to communicate with them, letting them know that I'm there. Like I give them words of wisdom. And I make it as an offering. I don't tell them you need to do this, because when people tell me what I need to do, I automatically I don't hear it. And so what I've learned to do is I make offerings. I was like, well, let me just offer you this to consider. And sometimes they listen. My son, he rarely ever listens to me. But then 3 days later, he'll come back and be like, Mom, man, I should have listened. And I'm like, well, what happened? And da 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 da. And so then in those moments, I'll say, so son, when I offer you something, I'm not doing it, to try to run your life. But there's just some foresight, some insight that I have with certain things. You know what I'm saying? So, and then I'm just learning how to pray. Like pray to who you believe in, and just trust. I've done my part. I'm here to support. They're not, they don't belong to me, like what I'm saying? Like they don't belong to me in the sense of possessing them like that. And so once I accepted those things, then allow them to make their mistakes. And I'm learning compassion, because I was told that I can be kind of hard. I could be absolute. And so in my working with them, it's been teaching me how to be compassionate and to accept that everybody's not going to think like me. And even though they were all raised in the house with me.
I like that idea of offering. Okay, so I wrote that down. So I'm gonna take that. Like, can I, offer you something? I really like that. Are there other things that other people have figured out, like when dealing with young adults, even if you don't have children, just dealing with young adults, particularly in that age set where they got all the answers and all of us are stupid? Figured out to how to lead them from behind? Like, what ideas do y'all have?
I like the idea that there's this concept where parents have to recognize that their role is evolving and transitional. And when you come into that period of teenage, adolescent, and young adulthood, that your role is not parents. You'll always be parent, but in terms of parenting, you transition to becoming a consultant. So just as Venicia was saying that, let me offer this to you. So it's not that I'm telling you what to do, but rather you are coming to me and I'm trying to co-create with you and consult and give you advice, and being able to take it and run with it however you want to. But as a parent, recognizing that you are now a young adult and I have to treat you as such. So if you have the power to make a decision, but you also have to accept the consequences and recognize that your decisions do in fact come with some things that you have to accept and recognize and move forward from there. So
Mhm.
And I think that's the part where boundaries come in, because when we have that conversation of like our children don't belong to us and then we need to be consultants, or let me offer you something, and kind of leading from behind, then sometimes parents will take that into, so then I can't have boundaries or limits when they come back home. And so that's not what I'm saying. You can have boundaries and limits, and you can, it's very important for you to be clear about what those boundaries, the limits there are, and you can't force them to, make the choices that you want them to make. They get to make a choice, but then there's a consequence for that choice that they made. So yeah, I think that's really important. And Jamila, you were gonna say something.
I was just going to say the idea that we don't have ownership of our children, it resonates with me. That we're co-creators and holding the space as a family together with them. Particularly once they get us to be a certain age. And so we consult with them, right? And we offer to them. I like that. I think, Venicia, you said a lot of what you're doing is based on what you didn't have as a young person growing up. But for me, I think it's a little similar, but it's not what I didn't have, but what I observed in my mother's and grandmother's relationship. So one thing I learned from their relationship, observing it, is that it's important that your child have dignity, and that we talk with them, in a way that it doesn't give up our position as elders, but that respects the fact that they deserve dignity. Mm-hmm. So I love my grandmother very, very much, but she doesn't always speak to my mom with the most dignity. And she says things that was like,
you got your recording.
I know, right? Hopefully nobody in the Lyles family, the Blevins family, clicks on this recording, because you do not air dirty laundry in the community. So I'm just gonna leave it there. I learned a lot from that conversation. Those conversations. Woo! No, people, I think anybody who is tech savvy enough to find this recording will know what I mean. So we love you, Gran. We love you. But it's important for me. I think it'll cause a lot less conflict. It will cut down on conflict when I stop and take a breath and remember, and to ask myself, am I speaking to my daughter with dignity? The respect and dignity that I would want.
I love that. How do y'all deal with young people, particularly that college age, young adult, anywhere from, let's say, 18 to 30, that make bad decisions? How do you deal with it? Like the bad decisions that change your life permanently kind of decisions. The kind of decisions that we made when we was that age that our parents was praying.
Well, so for me, I want my second daughter, when she went off to college, first of all, I offered to her because I could see, I had some insight. Like her, I didn't like 4-year school. Her motive for going, like she was just trying to get out of the house, that kind of thing. And it reflected in her academics. Because my first one, straight A, salutatorian, Gates scholarship, PhD, that one. And then my second one, she just wanted to get out of the house. And so I wouldn't sign like the Parent Plus loan, whatever that was. I just wasn't, because I already knew it. I already saw it. It just wasn't gone. But anyway, my grandmama did it. And the first year down, like she ended up with a baby. Mm-hmm. So before then, like she lost looked like 40 pounds in 9 months. And so I'm like, I know she ain't starving because she got what she need. So she was dibbling and dabbling in the stuff. And then I started seeing like mug shots, like I was getting phone calls. And so I had to do a lot of praying and really relinquish control to spirit and provide counsel. Like I really like, and then I wouldn't bail her out. Like, and that was that tough love thing. Like when I found out what was going on, like she had to sit in there and she called me crying. And I just, even though I wanted to, I felt like if I did, then, and I even Olaifa, I got a consultation with this same daughter. I gave her a car and all this stuff, and then she didn't do the right thing. And then I went and got a divine, like, should I put the money into this engine? You know, and it came back no. And guess what? I went and did it anyway. And as soon as the car was fixed 3 days later, it was totaled. And she didn't have insurance. So yeah, so I ended up with a grandson, and I love my little grandson. He's almost 5 now. But one of the things as a result of that, I'm not an on-demand babysitter. And so I was stressed during that time. She ended up having to move back home. She decided, her and dad, they co-parent really well together, but she couldn't get the support she needed. She couldn't get the really good medical care that she needed in Savannah. So she ended up coming back home. So now me having her to come in the house, and I'm having to deal with a pregnant, morning sick person throwing up in the middle, you know, hearing her gagging all night, and I can't stand vomit. It was just a lot of stuff. So, but I was there, like, so remembering how, you know, my situation, I was there all the way through, was in the delivery room, you know, so I offered support. I was hurt. We had our conversations when the time, you know, allowed, but she was nurtured, and she still received love during that process. I got a wonderful grandson, but I don't babysit until I feel like it. And she'll be like, well, you one of those new school grandmamas. I'm like, I told you when you and Daniel had that boy, that now if y'all weren't doing the right thing, then I would step in and go to court. But otherwise, my time is, I raised you all. Like my kids, and they didn't get to spend the night at a whole lot of places. I was there. And so when I feel like being bothered, then I'll get him if I want to give you a break. But you ain't gonna guilt me into keeping him, because that was a conscious choice, conscious or unconscious. That was a choice that y'all made. So we can look back at it now and kind of laugh about the mug shots, but it was embarrassing. Let me tell you. So I had to get out of my own ego and and I had to realize that she was equipped with certain tools, but the choice was hers whether she wanted to use them or not. So I could not hold myself personally accountable for that mugshot. Like, yes, that I could with what I had in raising her. And I had to go through a whole lot of processes with that. We laugh now because the mugshots were a mess. And she talked about, man, you know, you didn't get me out, but you know what? We can get together and they'll thank me. And she'll be like, I'm glad that you didn't, because I had to sit in there, you know, and think about it. So that's how I dealt with it.
That's a lot. Woo. What about the rest of y'all? I don't think anybody can top that story.
No, but thank you for sharing, Venicia. Wow.
Yeah.
What was the question? I was like so encased in the story, I forgot.
So, like, how do you deal with your young people making bad decisions that are, and particularly, and I'm really focused on those life-changing bad decisions?
I pray. My daughter, in the middle of this COVID, decided that she wanted to go to spring break in Miami. And I was like, ma'am, you're in the middle of a pandemic. It's not the time for you to get in a car and drive more than 12 hours across the United States just so you can do spring vacation. And so she's like, I just want to do it. I just want to do it. And I was like, you are putting yourself and your health at risk. And she's like, I still want to do it. So I just had to pray for her and let her go. And when she came back, she was in quarantine. She wasn't staying with me. She was staying with my sister at the time, because my sister is in the place where her school is located. And so my sister had her in quarantine. you know, and that was a consequence of that. In the house, like you already in sheltered in place, and inside your own house you quarantine, if that makes sense. And then she wanted to come home to Atlanta, and so she got on a plane and had to be quarantined once she arrived in Atlanta, because it's like, man, you can't be around all these other people with these, you know, with potential exposure to pandemics and bringing it back to the household. So I just prayed over her. You know, I had to go, you know, check with the spirits and make sure if I needed to do any special offerings or anything. But I just had to release it, because I had a talk with her and I was like, I don't think this is wise. I absolutely think this is unwise, and this is why. And she was like, well, I want to do it anyway. I said, okay. And I let it go. And I didn't argue with her about it. Every other member of my family was telling her the same exact thing. So she heard it on multiple fronts, and she chose to do it anyway. And I don't think she had as much fun as she could have. You know, lots of things were closed down when she was there. I don't know, did she get her full experience? But it might be a lesson for her, you know, for the future.
Did y'all ever think you would get to the point where the primary thing that would be coming out of your mouth is that you just had to pray? This sounds like your grandmama.
I know.
I heard time and time again that when you get older, your prayer life, your prayer life goes up to a whole nother level, and that's the truth. It's the truth. My child went to Europe for spring break.
Oh,
got back right before everything was quarantined, and I prayed the whole time, but I think she had a blast. That's the challenge for me. So she might do it again. But yeah, you pray the whole way. You have to, because you really have no control over that situation. You have to trust that their walk and their journey is theirs. It's just that it's their walk and their journey, and everything that they learn, everything that experience is preparing them for whatever it is that they're supposed to do in the future.
And I think for me, that's where finding the joy comes in, is being able to recognize it's their path, and you gonna pray. And if you've been praying, and you know them people praying for you, because I mean, y'all look all like innocent and stuff. I know I made bad decisions. I made a bunch of bad decisions, and people was praying for me. And so how I ended up with a PhD, and you know, I don't know, somebody was praying hard. And so I think that's one of the keys. And that's why I had that kind of like at the very top, is like asking the ancestors, because I go every single day to the ancestors and I'm like, y'all make this sweet. I be asking for sweetness and honey and calm, because I got that young one that got a little mouth on her, and I ain't one for mouth. I'm not that mom. So, but I know, like Jamila was saying, I don't want to just be saying stuff that, what's the word that you use in Jamila to describe?
Dignity.
Yeah, like I want to say stuff, you know, to preserve her dignity, but at the same time, she don't necessarily do that to other people. So being able to kind of have that balance means that my prayer life has gone up exponentially. And I have found that has made me like way happier to be able to kind of manage that situation when that comes up. Basil, was that your hand up, or you were okay?
I was fixing my headphone.
Okay. And that makes a huge difference for me when I notice that they're making bad decisions. But at the same time, I'm not shy about saying, Venicia said it better, I think, by like, let me give you an offering. But I do say flat out, like, so my youngest daughter wanted to go, it was her birthday, and she wanted to go on this trip, or they're gonna be driving in a car and staying in an Airbnb and all this other kind of stuff because she's turning 20. And I was like, I don't think that's a good idea. And this is like at the end of March. I don't think that's a good idea because everything is shutting down. And, you know, she was taking it like I was hating on her, like I'm some, you know, person on the social media trying to plot and plan against her. I'm like, no, honey, there's a pandemic, and they're probably not going to even let you go and rent this place. And so one of the things that I ended up having to realize is to balance the idea of being able to give her feedback and at the same time be sensitive to the fact that it was a big deal to her. And, you know, at one point she was like really just like balled up in a corner crying because she was just like, my birthday is being ruined. And that was a really big deal for her because she was turning 20. And so for me to find a balance of saying, I don't think this is a good idea, and this is why I don't think it's a good idea, but then at the same time, just having some empathy for her and helping to preserve her dignity in that particular situation. So we did stuff to try to make up for it. And I mean, it wasn't like a trip, but I did try to like compensate for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, in terms of the specifics of this time, what helped me deal with my daughters was to remember that they're in college. And for my older daughter, it's her senior year. And she talked about all the things that your daughters talked about. Like, everybody is supposed to be able to go on spring break during their senior year. It's the last hurrah, because next year I'm going to a graduate program and stuff is about to get serious. And when she got the news of who was in her graduate school cohort, they're all much older. So a lot of the students have had gone to get a master's degree first and had work experience, and some have families, or some are older and returning to school. And so she'll never be with this cohort in this way anymore. And so I had to remember that. And my younger daughter is a rising senior, but she wanted to do all this fun stuff that you do your junior year, in particular around student life. And that was just shut down for her, you know. And so I had to remember that when they were frustrated and processing their feelings, you know, that, and even if they didn't always treat us, their parents, with the most dignity, that it was still important for me to affirm their dignity while, like you're saying, being firm and setting boundaries.
I love this. Okay, so Alethea, say what you just did. Alethea I always tease and say that she's our resident chaplain at the office. So she put a scripture down. Say that one for us, Alethea.
Okay. Unmuted. So this is one of my favorite scriptures. This is the NLT version. So we don't look at the NLT. I'm sorry, New Living Translation. So there's several different translations of the Bible.
Break everything.
Yes, yes. So my Christian walk. And so this one says, so we don't look at the troubles we can see now. Rather, we fix our gaze on things that cannot be seen. For the things we see now will soon be gone, but the things we cannot see will last forever. The King James Version says that the things that are seen are temporary and the things that are unseen are eternal. And so just as you were talking about your youngest and what they were looking at, like, we have to do this. This is what's happening now. This is great. This is wonderful. But the reality is it will come and go. If we need to recreate a new experience, we need to help them that the gifts of being alive, the gifts of family, those things that you can't put a price on, those things that you can't really see, is what is really most important. And just reminding ourselves of that as well.
And so, okay, this is terrible, but I was also like, one of the things we can't see right now is that virus. But
yes, well, I did think of that too, but I didn't want to. We don't want to call that. That's eternal, but yes, yes.
One more thing that I wanted to offer, and then then we can get ready to close out, and I'll see what you all had to offer. Is I started having conversations with my girls around the reality of what things will look like over the next 4 or 5 years, and making that. And so I use Benicia's terms of offerings, because you have to remember the last economic downturn. If you have young adults right now, they were little kids. So they didn't understand the impact of what that was. And I noticed that my daughters, particularly, I mean, we're blessed. And so we've got, a roof over our head, food to eat, things like that. And so because we have those things, they weren't even really getting, I mean, they would make comments like they weren't really getting that there were lots of people that were out of jobs, that there are lots of people that have food instability right now. And so I started to talk to them about, like, no, you all need to recognize that when you come out, because there are going to be so many people that are out of work, when you get ready to come out of college, there are going to be people that have way more 10, 15 years of experience that will take the job that would have been an entry-level job because of what's happening right now. And of course, they think I'm crazy, that I don't know what I'm talking about. And I always will tell them, all right, y'all gonna learn. We don't eat meat, but I'm just like, that meat is crazy. Y'all gonna find out. But just having that conversation. So like, and not that I'm trying to like wish anything on them, but I'm just like, I want y'all to like really recognize, I don't want it to be said that I did not say to y'all, you might want to hang out in graduate school a little bit longer. You might want to do a couple of more internships. You may want to figure out how to do other stuff and connect with other people, because the competition that you're about to have to try to get it just over broke is going to be way different than what you anticipate. So for you all, what is your kind of like takeaway tip that you would say to young adults that would help keep them in check with the reality of the situation that we have right now, but then also is a balance where your heart feels light, your mind feels clear, and you have the space to be able to connect with your own joy?
I'll jump in. I think the first thing that comes to my mind is connection. Because I think sometimes our kids are so in their own world, and it makes it difficult for them to understand what other people are going through. And just stressing the importance of being connected to other people, having conversations with other people.
Yeah.
Aside from that, they miss it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
And even speaking on that, Consuela, so I interact with a man and his 2 boys, and all 3 of them have their own video game consoles. So that issue of connection, resonates with me. And so I'm trying to rack my head like, well, what can we do? So I bought a game of Clue over to them. That they weren't feeling that. Then I brought over a box of Uno. And I just left it there. I was like, yeah, we could need to have a game night. But they organically was just like, yeah, we played Uno the other night, man. It was kind of cool. And then somebody was like, well, yeah, come and play with me, Miss Alethea. And so I'm like, okay, sometimes you just have to put it out there to make it visible for them to connect with it. And then, they too will realize, yeah, I do want to connect. I don't need to be separate in my own room playing my video game. So it's really cool.
Connection. So what else? We got connection in different kinds of ways.
I think just to reiterate my perspective that I gained and shared during this time, recognizing, and this is from my research and my studies about leadership, particularly in cultural nationalism, recognizing the dignity, you know, affirming the dignity in the young people, but reiterating to them and demonstrating to them that you deserve reciprocity. So treat me
I
with
love
the
that.
dignity that you want to be treated with. And stand firm on that.
I love that. Benicia or Olaifa, do y'all have something?
For me, it's about being present in this moment, like what is going on right now and what can you do in this moment, right? And I know you were talking about in the future, you know, the economy going down and how that may affect. But what are you doing right now to take full advantage of the opportunities that are with you?
Love that.
Yes, that, and I'm going to leave it there.
I love that. What are you doing right now in this moment to take advantage of the opportunities you have in this moment? Benicia, you might as well close us out because you got all kinds of wisdom in that brain. Come on. We trying to get where you at.
No. You said, now I'm going back to your book that I love. We'll talk about that later. The only thing that's really coming up, I heard your question and I was trying to come up with a deep answer. But the only thing that that I just keep hearing, that it's okay to change your mind. I mean, I don't know. Like, it's okay to make a decision, and then if you decide that that's not going to work for you, make another one. Like, it's really okay to do that.
I love that. Yeah. It's okay to change your mind.
Yeah.
So connection, reciprocity, it's okay to change your mind. Love it. I love it. And so mine, we go back to balance and boundaries. Having all of those things, I think, is a healthy way of being able to really be able to connect with young folks and be able to preserve your sanity as you're connecting with young people. I saw one question in the chat as we get ready to close out, the name of my book. So I actually have two. The one that Benicia is referring to is Sacred Healing Journey. It's Soul Food for Survivors of Abuse. And so it is a workbook that is from a indigenous African spiritual perspective in terms of being able to walk a healing journey when people have had abuse experiences in their childhood. So thank you, ladies, for showing up in this discussion this week. I just want to remind you, so next week our discussion is talking about sex. And so this should be a healthy discussion because my title for this one, I thought I said Black girls, but I said good girls like sex too. So I want us to have just like a whole conversation around the idea of sex, sexuality, what makes you feel sexy. It's not necessarily going to be a raunchy conversation, so you don't have to worry about it. I won't record you saying nothing raunchy. Just a really healthy conversation around the idea of being able to connect with your own personal sexuality. So I will see y'all next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Take care.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.